Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to Sunday service. I want to emphasize the word service here because it's always seemed to me strange that we should call these kind of gatherings a service. But I'll touch on that later. I am Bruce Davis. I'm one of the newly minted ministers here. And so I thought in the process of telling you, talking about family, I'm going to talk a fair amount about family and attachments. And in the process do that, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, so I'm not just this black box that people don't know anything about. I had a friend once. He was a Vedic astrologer, and he was looking at my chart one day, and he was laughing at my chart. And he said, Bruce, you are a businessman monk. And apparently that's a rare combination. I don't know what the stars have to do that, but he thought it was pretty funny. So let me tell you a little bit about my business background, since I was kind of born into it, actually. My grandfather bought a hardware store in the 50s, and my parents ran it after that. And then I've run it, and my son has run it. It's down in West Seattle. It's an Ace Hardware if you ever want to check it out. But that's, and if you hear any references to hardware, you'll know where they're coming from. And it was a family business. I worked for several decades with my mom and my dad both, and that was kind of a formative experience. I got to know them better working with them than I ever did growing up as their child, I think. And I always thought of the store as kind of a living entity. It had a consciousness, a spirit that I could relate to. And I tried to, over the years, I realized I needed to relate to my customers as friends, and my staff as, also friends and family. So it has a lot of qualities of family in that store, and I really appreciated that learning. I learned a lot about leadership in that situation. I think that's one of the things I needed to learn in this life is about leadership. And on the monk side, now I'm not really a monk per se, but I live in kind of a monkish community. And but I started meditating probably in college. I had a roommate that was who was meditating, and I saw him transform, and I could see that it was meant a lot to him. So I learned it. It was something called transcendental meditation. It's still around. And I did that for quite a while, and I was really interested in consciousness. I got involved in some new agey kind of things, and eventually ended up in another spiritual community. This was down in Auburn, Enumclaw Plateau area, kind of more of a new agey thing that was, we were kind of Findhorn wannabes, if the truth be known. But they were family. They were spiritual family, and some of my deepest connections are still with those people. One of the things I learned about and realized was the importance of a service, and I'm not talking about outward service. I'm talking about what we do here in gatherings such as this, where we talk about God. That's where I really learned the importance of service. It's not just for our personal reasons and needs that we come to these things. We actually, through meditation and through our attunement with one another, here I'm up here talking, but you're resonating with me and feeding back to me. There's a lot of energy going on. And these temples, this temple, with this dome, this energy, if you feel it, the energy is kind of cycling around. And when you do that, the light is drawn down and made manifest on this level. So that impacts not only just us personally, just not you and not I, but it also impacts the larger community. It impacts this geography. It impacts, in fact, the whole world, this and other places where, what does Jesus say, 3 or more and I are connected there I shall be. Well, that's the light being drawn down. And it's a very important service that we do. And whenever we get together in this way. And that really cemented for me the importance of community, because I can't do that alone. I could be up here talking with no audience and nothing would happen. And if there was an audience and no one up here, I'm not sure what would happen, but I don't think that would happen. But, you know, together, we are creating a resonance and an energy flow that brings down the light. So, one of the things, like I said, I was involved in this spiritual community, and we were interested in making it more manifest. So one year, I think it was 1983, I went up and down the coast visiting other spiritual communities. And there's a lot of them, and they do a lot of weird things. But I ended up at this place in the Sierra Nevada foothills called Ananda. And I knew nothing about Yogananda or about Kriyananda. I was interested in community. And I learned a lot there. I stayed there for 3 weeks, and they had a kind of a work-study program, and I was part of that. And then after that, I read the autobiography of Yogi, and then I started to get it, and that's when Master set his hook in me. And it took a while. I was pretty stubborn, but he reeled me in. And when Ananda started a community in the Seattle area, that's about the time I started. So as you can see, I think community, a spiritual family, has really been a formative part of my early life. Now let's talk about the reading that we had. And that reading is kind of, seemed kind of harsh, but I want to tie that into family, into spirit. And also to the other reading. We have another reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and they seem kind of different readings. I mean, there are totally different energies involved in them. And but let's talk about spiritual family and some of or just plain family, and some of the trials and the attachments that can maybe not be so formative. So in today's reading, I'm just going to quote a little bit of it. Jesus says, "I bring not peace, but a sword. And a man's foe shall be they of his own household." Now compare that with what Krishna says to Arjuna regarding with equal gaze a clod of mud, a stone, a bar of gold, impartial towards all experiences. I think you can see there's kind of not a dissonance, but they seem very different kind of things. And these are supposed to be parallel passages from the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. So what's with that? I think if we explore Matthew chapter 10, which is where the passage came from in today's reading, we see that in this chapter, Jesus is talking to just his disciples. And I think they're kind of newly formed at this point. And he's telling them how to go out and preach the gospel. And he tells them what towns to go to and who to see, what kind of places to stay in, and what to do if they're kind of indifferent to you, and what to do, or worse, what if they send the dogs after you. And then he comes up with this passage that we read, which was, a pretty stark warning to his disciples. And so this message was meant for the disciples. And I can imagine Jesus coming nowadays and being in a stadium with 100,000 people and saying these things. And I can imagine that the rate of domestic violence the next day would probably shoot up. And stabbings and ER would probably be also a concern. So this knowledge really wasn't for everyone. And this is an example of how all truth, all spiritual knowledge really isn't for everyone. I think this is very, very concerning. This is for the disciples, and because they're on an important mission. I mean, here they are with a great master. He's got a mission to perform, and they're there to do it with him. And Satan is going to pull out all the stops, really, to test them on this mission. So they can expect this kind of pushback. And there's another thing I noticed about chapter 10 is that of the 12 disciples, 4 of them were brothers. There were 2 sets of brothers among those disciples. And those are breadwinners. And taking that much income, so to speak, out of a family would probably gain some pushback. I got to think that people were probably concerned. These people are going away. They're going off to these villages. They aren't going to be supporting us anymore. What are we supposed to do? Is going to be the thoughts of the other family members, I imagine. And so, yeah, there's going to be pushback, and from the people that are, most dear to you in this life. And so that's what Jesus is warning us. If you're going to be serious about this, you're going to have to face this. And he put it out pretty starkly, but that was the truth that they had to hear. So there's numerous stories. We had one in the reading, but there was a couple times thinking about Master's life. There were a couple times when he, as a kid, went off. He thought he had another path. He had to go off and be this ascetic in the mountains. So he ran away 2 times, and his brothers had to go get him and fetch him and bring him back. But that was his. He was following what he thought was his path. The other thing was that they tried to marry him off 3 different times, and he wouldn't go along with it. So Master had a very clear idea of what his boundaries are with the family, that obviously he loved his family, but also obviously he's not going to let them dictate his spiritual life. Now, one of the things we do, I say this in respect to trials, but one of the things we do at Ananda, so we have classes, we have services, obviously, and we have classes and yoga, and we have retreats. We have a beautiful retreat center up there at Heart Song. And one of the things I've noticed, and it's almost laughable, but when you go on a retreat, the tests will start to come. And they don't come the moment you step on the property and start your retreat. The tests come as soon as you sign on the dotted line and put your deposit down. And it could be months before the retreat. But you'll see, and I say it's laughable because it's almost like clockwork. As soon as you sign up for a retreat, you will find the tests coming. Things will happen. Things will happen where you have to, maybe I shouldn't go, or I got to deal with this, and then I got to deal with this, and stuff happens. And so if you see it in the framework of tests, you'll see these things happening. So you have to kind of resist the drama that the world inflicts on you, and just forge forward through those retreats. I had, like I said, we were talking about the retreat. I was up there a couple weeks ago on a seclusion. It's a beautiful place, by the way. I was midweek. It was totally peaceful and quiet. So if you want to go on seclusion, it's a great place to go. And so I had cleared out my schedule, and an hour before I was planning on going, I get a text from Rebecca, my wife Rebecca, a cousin. And, he's a family member. He's been to our house a number of times, Christmas, Thanksgiving, that kind of thing. We've been to his house. And he's building a new house over there in Montana, and he's at the phase where he needs paint. So he texted me, Bruce, can I have a deal on paint? This is an hour before my retreat was scheduled to start. So he was family. So I said, yes. And we texted back and forth, and I had to text the store, and there was things to arrange. And I went ahead and went on my retreat, but there was still a certain amount of texting back and forth, details to conclude, et cetera, et cetera. It probably took about 4 or 5 hours of my time. Plus, it was in the back of my mind. And here I was supposed to be on retreat, thinking of God, doing my practices, and I had this other thing going, this distraction going on. Well, those are the kind of things God does to you. And what I should have done is said, fine, have someone else take care of it. I have people at the store. They could have dealt with it. So Master saw families as a great incubator. So even though what Jesus is talking about is beware families, kind of, Master did say it's a great incubator. This is where people refine their feelings of love, starting from a more human level where it's more transactional. I'll love you if you love me, and I'll love you if I like your aesthetic. But we can refine that in that laboratory of family. We can refine it to more universal love. I love you unconditionally. I don't care what happens. I will love you. And that's where we do those kinds of things. So I guess the moral of this story, these stories, is that support your family the best you can, but don't let them dictate your divine search. That's way too important for you. So let's go deeper, too. There's a deeper teaching in this notion of families and in attachments and who we have to watch out for. In the Bhagavad Gita, Master wrote a wonderful book, and the basis of this book really is an allegory for, it is based on a real battle, but the allegory is that it really is involving all the psychological qualities that we have within us. The key to this is the root names of all the soldiers are all in Sanskrit, are all these psychological qualities and habits and various things that we have in our conscious universe, I have to call it. We carry around with us these thoughts and beliefs and worldviews and ego and all these things, and we carry around for a long time. We grew up with them. In a sense, they're family members. We can hear these little thoughts in our head and identify them a lot of times with personalities and with various points of view. And we grew up with them. Quite frankly, we probably brought a lot of them forward from previous lives. They've been with us a long time. And so they are kind of family members. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna representing God and Arjuna representing the devotee, go between the lines of the battle. So you got the good qualities on one side and the bad qualities on another, and they go in between. And Krishna sees all the people that he has to fight. And they're all these family members, the cousins and nephews and friends and people he studied with. And he says, no, I can't do this. I can't fight. It's too dear. And Krishna says, no, you have to fight. If you're going to grow as a person, if you're going to continue the divine search, you must fight. And so that's what we're faced with, is we need to take that sword of discrimination, and we need to attack those qualities that are not doing us any good. They're in our head. These are these thoughts and worldviews and everything that we carry with us. And they're not helping us, even though we're really comfortable with a lot of them. We're real comfortable with our foibles. So we have to move for us to move on, for us to grow, we need to do that. We need to do battle. And it is a battle, literally a battle within ourselves. So let's talk about the Gita passage, and it was read earlier. And I'll just do a little part of it here. So Krishna's talking to Arjuna, unaffected by outward joys and sorrows, or by praise and blame, secure in his divine nature, impartial toward all experiences. So that's really kind of the end point of the warrior. This is what we're working towards. This is the centered, grounded, unaffected by the world kind of view that we're trying to be. And so this describes the warrior that's won, has risen to the occasion. But how do you get to that point? How do you go from point A to this point? And again, it's with that sword of discrimination. Now, I should point out too that we think of the warrior and fighting as a difficult thing, as a negative thing that we're using our hatred and crunch, with the sword. And it's not that at all. Because if you were to use hate, you would just be using another quality that's on the negative side. It doesn't advance your aim at all. You have to use love. You have to use love to fight your battles. You have to love what you're doing. Well, not love what you're doing, but love your enemy, in fact. And the other thing is, remember that Krishna is on that chariot with Arjuna. So you're doing it with God. In fact, you're doing it with the thought that God is the doer. He is the one that's doing the fight. You're just there with him as you do it. And yeah, you're providing your energy to it, but without his energy, you'd likely fail. You need to do this, and with that thought of God as the doer. So in that way, I see that a way is to harmonize these two thought forms. Is that it's kind of a progression. It's really a progression of who we are versus who we're going to become. And I think the feeling we have here is the calm realization that this is God's dream. This is where we want to end up, is God's dream. And this is God's life. And we're all living it. And we're all part of God's family. So thank you very much. I have a reading from Whispers. This is, burn thou my frailties in the furnace of trials. In the furnace of trials, the ore of my life is smelting. The fire of experience melts everything in me. But, O divine artisan, burn away all the dross of weakness in me. Bring out the steel of endurance and harden me into the strength of calmness. Shape thou sharp weapons of self-control and tenacity out of the tempered metal of my balanced mentality. With the weapons of mind equilibrium, teach me to fight my enemies of distraction. Thank you very much.